Hey everybody, Brendan Gulick and Anthony Meglin with you after the Buckeyes just wrapped up an impressive win over the Penn State Nittany Lions 20-12. And we are talking prospects for Ohio State. What does the immediate future look like, and specifically in the eyes of the polls? It almost sounds like a dumb question, but I think it's worth asking because I'm not 100% convinced that I'm going to see what I think we should see, especially from the AP voters. So the question we're posing, Anthony, is should the Buckeyes be ranked the number one team in the country? Ultimately, what we see in the coaches poll and in the AP poll is irrelevant. It's just fun. It's talk show fodder. The first actual rankings come out in basically 10 days. It'll be the Tuesday after the Wisconsin game next weekend when Ohio State will then find out, hey, where do they sit? And obviously, they have to beat Wisconsin, right? Let's not look past that. But the Buckeyes certainly look like a better team than the Badgers right now. So if we project this forward, and if Ohio State takes care of business against the Wisconsin Badgers, let's say Georgia's undefeated and Michigan's still undefeated going into that first CFP ranking. If Ohio State has 2 wins over Penn State and Notre Dame, do you think the Buckeyes, with what you've seen so far, should surpass the reigning Big Ten and the reigning national champions in Michigan and in Georgia?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and it's going to be the talk of the town, for sure, the talk of the country. And the debate is going to be there. And you could say anything you want about both of those teams. You could say anything you want about Georgia, anything you want about Michigan. The thing that Ohio State can hang its hat on is they have 2 of the best wins in the country. I don't care like who else does. Like Texas maybe has one, or excuse me, Oklahoma has one over Texas. Georgia really doesn't have a signature win on their schedule. You know, Alabama's on the outside looking in. Michigan certainly doesn't have a signature win. So it's going to be really hard, and I don't think that the voters will put Ohio State ahead of Michigan or ahead of Georgia, just from a historical perspective. But when you break it down and you look at the resume that Ohio State has and how they've continued to get better throughout the season, you have a really good case to saying that they're the number one team in the country. And you can argue that, with both of those teams, because Ohio State has 2 of the best wins in all of America to this point.
We talked leading up to this game that the Ohio State-Penn State contest was basically a game about opportunity for Penn State, certainly opportunity for the Bucs, but a Penn State team that has been knocking on the door. They've been so close to convincing you that they're an elite team in college football, but they haven't been able to get over the hump against Ohio State and against Michigan, even if they've essentially risen clearly above the rest of the pack, certainly in the Big Ten. And obviously they won the Rose Bowl last year. The game for Ohio State was especially meaningful because if you didn't see this, the 5th tiebreaker, it literally goes down to the number 5 tiebreaker in the hierarchy if Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State all go 1-1 against each other. And that 5th tiebreaker is your record against, let me rephrase that, your aggregate record against the teams in the other division in your conference. And Michigan and Ohio State don't have a chance to play Iowa. And right now, it kind of looks like Iowa's the best team in the West. Given what we've seen from the Hawkeyes, I don't want to assume they're not going to lose another game, but they are right now, I think, the best team in the West, and they got smoked by Purdue. So Purdue, in the situation where all 3 of those teams go 1-1 against each other, I'm sorry, I said Purdue, I mean Penn State. Either way, if there's a 1-1 scenario, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan all win and lose one game against each other, it's Penn State that will very likely get the bid to go into the Big Ten title game. So Ohio State beating Penn State today not only is important for Big Ten championship aspirations, it's important because they rack up another quality win and they don't have to wait and see what happens to somebody else to control their own destiny. So I guess I say all of this is like they're important data points that to me point to Ohio State being a bona fide legitimate candidate right now for number one team in the nation, even if this team doesn't look like what we're used to seeing them look like, with 500 yards of offense all the time and a first-round draft pick at quarterback that's going out and putting up stupid numbers.
Yeah, and like for us too, is this iteration of Ohio State, we're 8 weeks in now or 7 games in now. And like, maybe that's just what they are. And maybe that's just really, really good. And, you look around the country about some of the top teams, that we talked about. Oklahoma, they were in a dogfight today with UCF. I don't know how that actually ended up finishing. Georgia's been not looking that great. Like, maybe that's just the status of college football now, where it's, hey, now the top tier teams, which Ohio State's they've been in that like upper echelon. Maybe that line's starting to blur between teams 1, 2, and 3 and, teams 1 through 10. And that way, like, everyone's kind of getting much better and, making that so that when Ohio State plays a Penn State or whoever, they don't just come out and roll. So maybe that's part of the conversation too. But, hey, you're not going to, you're not going to find an argument out there that's better than Ohio State's. You truly aren't, because yes, those other teams are blowing everyone out like they're supposed to. But think about Penn State today. They've blown everybody out to this point. They faced the first real test of the first 60-minute test. They kind of got punched in the mouth too. So it's like, hey, Ohio State's going to come to the table and they're going to be a really hard team to not have ranked number 1 in the country.
We'll see where the AP and coaches poll put them this week, but I would expect with 2 wins over top 10 teams that right now you can't really argue that Ohio State's resume is better than Michigan's. Whether or not they put them ahead of Georgia, I guess we're going to find out. I will never be surprised to see Ohio State not be ranked number 1 behind an SEC team, but that's a conversation for a different day. In the meantime, the Buckeyes with a big 20-12 win. They are 7-0 and certainly one of the top teams in the country. Their trajectory is as high as anybody's after a performance like this today. 20-12 over Penn State. More coverage from Ohio State's 20-12 win over Penn State from the Horseshoe is available for you over on BuckeyesNow.com.